I noticed the other day that you guys were actually the first two guests on the podcast.
True.
Weird, eh?
That
and I didn't even know you at the time.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, where the very first episode was Bobby and I alone,
Yeah.
and then you were the first guest,
So how long ago was that?
early 2016.
16.
Yeah, and you were still in LA, so we did it via Zoom or Skype or something. And then, I'm pretty sure you were the very next episode after Dan.
And then was Stephen Small?
Yeah.
After
He
that?
was
early. So
He was maybe
true.
not the next one, but like a
But
couple
not
later.
far off.
Yeah.
Right. I remember you saying to me afterwards, "Oh, are you in any bands or anything?" I was like, "No." And you're like, "Oh, do you want to be?" I was like, "Okay."
Did I say that?
Yeah. Or you were like, "Do you want to do any music?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh, wow.
Because was that before I left? No, it was before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I just wasn't doing much at
Right.
the time. So yeah.
Yeah, so you obviously knew Bobby,
Yes.
because
yeah.
I wouldn't have known to invite you, you know?
It was through Op Shop, doing gigs with them, I think. That's how I met Bobby.
And then you buggered off for 2 years on your big sailing trip, and we did a couple of episodes on that.
Yeah, we did one on the way home, which has been actually really handy because a lot of people have said, "So how's your trip?" I'm like, "Oh, here's the podcast." I can't
It's all
remember
there.
it, and at least it's,
We've actually captured it for you too, for your memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's always going to be there.
And that actually coincided with another drummer I'd booked for a show, and lovely guy, but he was then booked for a tour and had to cancel the show. And then I was sort of out of a drummer. And then I just recorded that episode with you, the sailing episode. And I thought, well, I wonder if Jasper will do it. And I'd never heard you play before. But because you had worked with Steve and with Dan and, people that I trusted, I thought, well, he can't be that bad.
You took a gamble.
Yeah, I took a gamble. So, yeah, I invited you on that gig. That was that ATS Square gig.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember hearing about that. I think I was still away
Yeah, you were.
when
yeah.
you guys did that gig, and I remember Danny reaching out and just being like, "Oh man, Jasper is amazing." Couldn't hear anything. Everything seemed to go wrong in that gig, and
Yeah.
you're like, "But somehow he was just unreal."
That really impressed me, actually, the fact that we sound checked and it was okay, but when we got up to play, my monitors were just awful, and your monitors weren't even on.
Yeah, it was a tough one, eh? It was one of those, be very professional.
Yeah.
Just get through the gig, smile, and then at the end go, "Oh, that was hard."
But I remember after the gig, you came up and told me, like, I couldn't hear anything, nothing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how'd you do the gig then? And you said, I just followed the chart.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's like a level of professionalism that would bury a lot of other players. Like,
Fake it till you make it.
yeah, but doesn't that say a lot about having the prep and having a good system? And it's just being a pro, really. But
That's the opposite of faking it.
exactly, that's exactly.
Literally was so prepared. No faking at all.
So, you'd never played those songs before.
No,
Not live.
Not live. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So
Yeah.
I guess just having done it a few times, you always have your little plan B, C, and D, right?
Right.
You have to be prepared. I guess that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get, but also you're playing with other really awesome musicians, so everyone's there and giving
Right.
it 100%. It's good.
And that kind of pushes you also to step up, right? If you're working with,
Absolutely.
you don't want to be
Yeah.
the one that lets the team down.
I always say to people, playing with musicians that are better than you is always going to be awesome because you're always going to
Absolutely.
be like, "Oh man, I got to step my game up."
Yep, that's right. And all of this actually organically leads to this project. Because if that drummer hadn't have cancelled, then we arguably could have never started Noise Play.
Yeah.
Because once that gig went really well, I was then planning a different show that sort of fell apart when the pandemic started. Remember, for a minute, we were talking about this other thing? You've probably forgotten.
Which one?
With a couple of the other guys, we even had a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I sort of vaguely ended up being Noise Play anyway, but we started that, then the pandemic happened, and then we had that coffee on Skype that actually kickstarted the whole Noise Play project.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's all on you. You started the whole thing.
Well, I played some drums in my parents'.
No, but you were the one on that coffee who just for some reason said we should record a song. We should write and record a song.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. I guess I just figured with all the technology, you guys in your home studios, it's just so easy. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. But it was a sort of throwaway comment, right?
Yeah,
In that
well,
conversation?
yeah. But we made it happen.
Well, I remember thinking when you said that, I don't want to take the lead on this because I've already put albums out and I'll end up just writing one of my songs and then you'll end up just playing on one of my songs, So if it's going to be a collaboration, then I should probably get out of the way. So I said to you, just go and record yourself playing a whole bunch of grooves and then send that to me and I'll build off it. So I remember you sent through like 10 minutes of, at the same tempo, 10 minutes of variations
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, which was perfect because, there was halftime and, double time and different levels of intensity and stuff. And I was able to kind of put it together and go, okay, this could be the arrangement here and here and here.
That's right.
And then we sent it to you, and you were still living in LA. And I'm just going to give myself lots of compliments today. Another thing I think I did really well was also not getting your way.
Well, that was the whole idea. You reached out to me. Obviously, I knew Jasper. In those days, you didn't really know Jasper that well, I guess, other than that.
Apart from the
one
sailing episode, yeah.
So
and the gig, yeah.
But yeah, that was you were just like, hey, and it was during lockdown. I think it was the earliest parts of COVID.
The very first
one, very early.
Yeah.
And yeah, no instruction. You were intentionally like just making a point of like, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's no rules here.
Yeah.
We'll just see what happens if we give everyone complete freedom to see what turns out.
Because normally in that type of environment, you put together a draft and you put in like a placeholder baseline, let's say.
Normally, you'd have some kind of instruction of kind of here's what we're going for.
Exactly. But I left it bare.
Well, and so every step of the way it was so organic and creative because it was not with everyone only following their instincts. Also helps when you have musicians who aren't going to try and do stupid stuff and steal the limelight. Everyone has done quite tasteful stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I might have gone a little bit ridiculous because I was like, I might have sent you a few takes or something, 3 takes.
Did you?
I might not have.
I think you only.
I might have just sent you the one. Just been like, here you go.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you might have actually sent me like you often do, like a safe take.
Just in case this is too ridiculous.
Yeah.
Here's a simple one that you can.
In fact, I think you did do that, and I think you've done that on all the projects we've done where that's been the arrangement. And I think I've always gone for the wackier one.
Well, you're probably one of the only people because I always do those in the hope that someone's going to. I assume that people will use the safe take that isn't too busy. And then, and I'll say something like, well, and there's a crazy one if you want to grab any fills or anything else.
And I'm always like, crazy.
And you're just like, use the entire crazy one. It's very nice.
But it always gives these interesting little moments, like the big bass moment at the end of Hustle Bustle.
But it's...
that was the wacky take, but we kept it.
Totally. I was going to, even with just a little bit, which is the song that we're talking about during lockdown, that was... Yeah, I mean, what was there originally, I think, was just the Jasper drums that you'd put together, and just a simple
that
guitar
high funk thing that I play,
and a vocal, I guess.
Yeah, but in the section where you sort of took the lead on it, that there's no vocals there.
Yeah.
Or there's sort of 2 sections like that, but yeah, the point being is that you had like a very high funk guitar part and a drum beat.
Yeah.
And I think on the chart I said something like vamp in A minor or something like that, and you vamped all right.
But then, of course, so what I was going to say is what happened for me was there was like these cool things happening in the drums which would trigger ideas for me, and that would set off all of my ideas because it was completely improvised. Like I didn't plan parts, I didn't do much. I just hit record and went, I'll just play till the end and see what happens.
Yeah.
But there were those little moments that inspired me just listening on the spot to kind of react to it.
Yeah.
Which then, in turn, I guess, filtered the whole way through the rest of the song. When Mark Steven came in, he would like hear something that I did and either like double it, or that would set him off an idea. I think it was just a bit too easy, really. Like it kind of shouldn't have worked the way that it did.
And it's a complicated arrangement, actually, when you sort of retrospectively look at it.
Oh, I still that outro thing that I improvised. I still have to spend an hour reading a chart, learning what I actually played
to remember how to do it
because I have no idea. You'd listen to it, I'm like, I'm never going to learn this again.
And from our point of view, we sent it to you. We were just making a demo for fun.
Yeah,
we didn't think it was going to be that amazing. Then you send back this monster performance, and like, oh my god! And then we send it to Mark, and he comes back and has not only added all these beautiful organ parts and so on, but he's also doubled a large part of your bass line on the piano, which makes it sound incredible. And it just grew and grew and grew, and we ended up with this, very sparkly demo. Still,
but still enough to be like, hey, we should do more of this.
Yeah, but it was a demo because, like you recorded with your electric drum kit. So it was literally just a stereo out of like sampled sound. So it didn't sound amazing, but it sounded vibey for
good
what
enough
it was.
to work with.
Yeah. Let's actually listen to some of it.
About to explode. Don't make you wanna cry just a little bit. Just a little bit. Try just
so this stop coming up at the end of the next line. to me, that's an example of how you did inform the song.
Yeah.
And like lots of moments like that, because that was all in the drums.
Yeah.
And I responded to that and what I wrote over the top of it, and then everybody else followed that space, and that whole space has become a huge feature now.
It's cool, eh?
Yeah.
I played it to someone the other day, and that was their favourite part.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
just explained, I stole that from hip hop. Hip hop always does that stop and comes back in.
Right.
I think it's on the 3 or the 2. I don't know.
Comes back in
but-
on 2, yeah.
Yeah, it comes
Yeah.
back on the 2. But
Yeah.
I love that when hip hop does that. So
Yeah,
steal
absolutely.
that.
And if
Works.
we jump forward to the other bit, so on this bit coming up was blank. This is the bit we're talking about, and this is when Dan's like, all right,
Well, it was just a strum on one chord from the guitar.
yeah, like 2
basically, right?
strings.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can hear my high guitar. If you imagine, listeners, it's just that and the drums. And, we're not quite at that part yet. But this is coming up. This is the moment that really made the whole thing click for us. Here we go.
And man, I was blown away when you were like, sent me through a version aftermarket recorded.
Yeah.
And you were like, just check it out. Didn't say
No.
anything. You're like, just listen to this. The fact that he doubled all of that still blows my mind.
Yeah. And it always makes me think of almost like a circus sort of vibe.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know why. Just like
Well,
those
it's-
weird note choices.
There's super quirky notes in there. I mean, I was like, I want to go for a real funky thing, but a kind of weird thing.
Yeah.
But it also, what he did was by mirroring that, it makes it feel, it's kind of jammy, but it sounds very, very thought out and
Yes.
planned and structured, even though it's not. His
Intentional.
part is. He did a lot of work to do that, but
It's almost harder to do what he did, right?
way harder.
Because you had the flexibility of being the first there.
Yeah.
But he had to follow what you had done.
Well, that was like that stream of consciousness, just
Yeah.
like, I just want to play some funky, weird shit. And I don't know. That's just what happens when you go free. But
What I think's interesting about that part of the song is it sounds like it's really ramping up in intensity, but it's doing so really without much on the guitar. And people will often think, well, if it's going to be really rocky, it's going to be very guitar driven.
Yeah.
And there's still just that funk guitar and a couple of low guitars sort of buried
that
in the mix.
awesome synth that's
there's
swelling
this-
up and
But also the intensity of you and Mark.
Yeah.
Is piano and bass is actually what's driving the dynamic there,
totally.
which is sort of counterintuitive, probably to some people.
Well, in terms of getting big in a song, you're right. It's
Yeah.
only more distortion on the guitars.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah, so that was 2020. That was a long time ago now. And,
4 years.
and then we kind of forgot about the song and moved on with our lives
for a while. Yeah.
for a while.
I tried to with COVID in the way.
Yeah, obviously you ended up back in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And we started working on the first sort of incarnation of Noise Play was a live show, which maybe we'll touch on briefly because it was sort of a success and failure all at once.
Yeah. It was a big stretch.
Yeah. It was one of those, it was, you got to give these things a go, right?
Totally.
So we put together the show. We weren't really doing much in the way of original music. It was mostly reworked covers, which was the idea at the time. And we thought, what if we just book a venue and sell tickets and get a good band together and just do something cool? I wonder if we can make this work creatively and financially. And we wrote a really good show, and the original concept was going to include video, like visuals.
Well, that was one of the biggest parts of it, wasn't
Yes.
it? Was a big visual
right.
experience.
Yes, exactly. Plus with an intro piece that would then sort of lead us up onto the stage and be a whole thing. But we chose a venue that was going to be, it was a very old, vibey venue with wooden floors and all that kind of stuff.
Intimate.
Very intimate. We were going to be plonked right in the middle with everyone around us. It was going to be a really, really beautiful sort of scenario. And then we got slammed by one of the lockdowns.
Yeah.
And it was one of the lockdowns that was only a week long.
But threw everything out.
Because the other thing we discovered was that you can't just go, we'll do it a week later because everybody else has still booked everything.
Yeah, all their bookings didn't get affected.
No.
But anyone in that week, and because it was summer,
Yeah.
essentially end of summer, so just everything was booked for the next 4 to 6 months.
That's
we just
right.
couldn't find a venue.
We did sell out,
Yeah.
which was awesome, but now we also had to rush to find another venue because we couldn't expect people to hold their tickets for extended. Well, I suppose
and it was-
people have done that since, but
It was awkward because everyone else's perspective is like, it was only a week lockdown.
Right.
Everything's back to normal now.
exactly, yeah. How long did it take us to find a new venue? Because it was a stressful.
Stressful, but we didn't muck around.
No.
And then once we found the idea of the venue that we ended up with, I think we moved pretty quick. I think a few days after
Yeah.
that, it was all booked.
It's sort of where we made a mistake, though.
Yeah.
Because it was a beautiful venue. We went to a theatre.
A movie theatre.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Well, it doubles as a movie.
Doubles,
Yeah. It was a beautiful room, and we were really excited about it when we realised it was available. But what we didn't really think through was that the entire design of the show was based on the first venue.
Yes.
Which is a completely different venue.
Well, yeah. But we were so sold on the fact of like, well, the visuals are such a big part of the show, and they have a movie screen.
Yes.
That will be good for the visuals. That'll look cool.
Also, because on the first venue, everyone would have been mingling in there before the show started, and we were going to have like basically a movie playing on the wall, projected on the wall. That would be like half an hour of stuff in the background, and then the movie would cut to us introducing ourselves, and would come out and play
when
the
you're
show.
sitting in big theatre seats, and it's like
we didn't click that everyone went in and sat down to watch.
Yeah.
And they watched like a 30 or 40 minute movie. Everyone's looking at their watch going,
sorry, everybody.
And then after that, I think we still had like a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
And so that was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
And then there were a few other technical challenges we faced that day, and a few other things.
There were.
Yeah. So we came out the other end of that. I was proud of us for having done it, but I was pretty downtrodden from that experience. I think you were robust about it for some reason. I also had a family member who made it clear that
That's right.
they weren't very happy with it, and I was like, yeah, thanks for your support.
Yeah, cheers.
But then I think we sort of put the project back on hold again, sort of, apart from another little show we did later in the year.
We had a little hiatus, I guess, if you could call it that, after those shows.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how long later, was it a year later after the second of those shows, we kind of reconvened and just immediately taking the lessons from that first lot of shows and everything that we did, we kind of just pivoted into originals. I mean, you're a writer, you've always written, we all like to do a lot of original music. But
Well, there was a moment that sparked it off, though. We watched the Get Back documentary
That's
together.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, the Beatles.
Somehow when we were watching it, we were like, we got to do something ourselves.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that obviously triggered it off. And then did we start off, I think we made the decision to each of us, like everyone just like bring in a couple of ideas and we'll just jam. We'll just get in the room and see what happens, play through some ideas, see if there's any.
Yep.
And I think from that first time that we jammed through, I think all of the songs that are on this album were basically in that initial bunch of songs.
Almost,
right?
yeah.
Pretty close to it.
Almost. We did actually miss a bit out, I just remembered, because we had already recorded some of She'll Have Her Way.
That's true.
Yeah, like a year earlier. And that was actually also a Beatles-inspired move, because we had just listened to the McCartney 3 album.
Yeah, true.
Which was recorded, like, he did it himself in his home studio.
Yeah, we're just like, let's just put a couple of crappy mics on some drums
Yeah.
and see what we get.
Well, you and I have often talked about, like, the number of artists that always go to the same studios and end up with the same drum sounds and stuff.
Yeah.
Why aren't people more inventive and creative with that stuff? And then we started to go, what if we recorded Jasper through like 2 tracks, 2 channels, and I think we put 2 mics into one and one mic into the other.
Yeah.
So do you remember how we did it? Was it 1 on the kick, 2 overheads?
I feel like it was just a kick and an overhead.
There were definitely 3 mics, because I remember we plugged 2 into one channel. So there's part of it that was mixed together.
I'll have to look at the session. I actually can't remember.
Maybe it was kick and snare and overhead or something.
Might have been. Well, because you played the snare with your hand, right? Well, you played the drums with your hands.
Yeah, I think the hi-hats with my hands. And then
Not the snare?
I can't remember.
Maybe it wasn't
the
yeah, maybe it was rods on the snare.
Yeah. I mean, listening back to it, you can't really tell.
No.
It's weird. Hands just seem wrong, but it worked. Yeah, I don't remember a lot of mics, that's for sure.
It might have just been the cymbals, because I think because we were doing it that way, I think the cymbals were so bright and loud.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think, why don't you just use your fingers?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. I mean, that's
Something
exactly
different.
that's exactly the point, is to invent.
Problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you definitely have your set ways of going into a studio and going, I know this works.
Yes.
Whereas that was cool to get pushed out of your comfort zone and
Right.
try something completely wacky. And yeah, I think the result was cool.
I remember on that session, you were instinctively, playing a few fills and things like that, and you kept going, less.
Yeah, less is more. It's funny.
No fills.
Every studio session, people say that to me. I don't know what it is. It's like, I think
You're like, more is more, right?
Yeah, who doesn't want more fills?
Well, that was pretty a drastically different song, and
Yeah.
still, but weirdly, that was still in the covers mindset, I guess, from the original concept that
Yes.
we were working on.
That's right. Yeah, I can't even remember why we recorded it.
I don't know either.
I think we're just experimenting.
we'd probably started playing with it as an idea to add to the show, and liked it so much, well, let's just record it.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, yeah, I guess that floated when we, after that, however long after that was, when we started jamming, I think, yeah, those initial ideas and just everyone bringing in a couple of ideas just set the wheels in motion.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And in the space of an afternoon of jamming or something, I think we structured up
Yep.
a bunch of songs, maybe 3 or 4.
One thing that, from my experience with that, was that I think we gave ourselves 2 weeks between making that decision and actually having the rehearsal. And I set myself a challenge of like, I'm going to write so many, like, I don't remember what I said, 6 songs or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to write 6 songs in the first week, and then I'll, in the next week, I'll just sort of get my head around them and then make acoustic demos of them. One thing I really like doing from a writing point of view is really limiting myself. Having deadlines for me is crucial, because you have to move so quickly that you don't labor average ideas. You just chuck them out and you just focus on the good ones. So
Otherwise, it takes forever to get anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Got to be efficient.
and you kind of overwork the song. I think sometimes you end up killing the song.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, it's like if the idea is a good idea, it shouldn't require much work, you know? So I really liked that part of it for me, because I hadn't really been writing so much in the years leading up to that. So it was nice to kind of put that back on. And
Well, we also made a point, I think, of that process where quite often the way that you and I, when we're producing stuff, we sort of get a demo idea down and then like program some drums, program
Yes.
some things. We started from the outset by, like, even in that first little jammy rehearsal with that, we plugged everything in. We had a full multi-track session
Right.
in Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And from the beginning, we used that basis of like what Jasper was playing,
Yep.
what we were all doing to inspire every step of the way.
yes,
Which is why I think it ends up sounding the way that it does now, is because it's similar to that process that we did during the lockdown when we were all remotely recording and everything. It inspired all those other ideas to be able to happen, that if we had have tried to break it down too much to start building these tracks, I think they would have not had anywhere near the same impact or
Yeah.
feeling that they do.
yeah. Well, I think modern recording processes give you so many good options, but it's easy to forget some of the positives that come from the old school way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
And programming drums, I mean, you're such a professional when it comes to learning a song that we'll often send you a demo and you'll learn the drums that are played. So I mean, like, no, don't play that.
But you that's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
when you do a session, you don't know how much the client knows, and you think, I should just learn every fill that's been programmed, because imagine getting into the studio and then them going, hey, you didn't play that fill in
Yeah.
bar 32, and you go, dang it. So yeah, I guess, yeah, you just best to be prepared. But,
Yeah.
you know, I also really enjoy guitarists and bass players and, you know, other musicians programming drums, because it's stuff that I don't think of.
Right.
And then it can go the other way, where someone will program something that's actually physically impossible to play. And then you have to have that awkward conversation. Yeah, I've only got 2 arms, guys.
That must happen a lot, right?
It
Where
happens
the
all the
hi-hat's
time.
still going, but there's a fill over there or something.
Or recently, I had an experience with a cross stick right next to a rim shot.
Oh, right.
And it's you can't. Yeah, it was like rim shot snare, rim shot then accent, and it
Right.
was just like you can't physically do that.
Yeah.
but a computer can. So yeah, it's really interesting.
I
But
think
love it.
I think we're also again inspired by the Beatles doc, watching them in the room just working it out, and how so much of, I mean, you know, the whole, I think probably the big song on that is Get Back, and watching Paul McCartney sit there and come up with the seed idea, and then it takes shape across the documentary. I think that kind of reminded us that, like, wow, us responding to each other is actually where it's at.
Yeah.
And we play together live so much, and so many great little magical things happen. It's something that I find really interesting. You know how many moments in the show we've ended up sort of writing or tightening up on, and we've never once discussed them. But on one gig, someone will do something and someone else will respond, and it actually becomes a fixture.
Yeah.
And I love those things, because it's like, how does it even work? How do we do that?
It's just been playing for so long, I guess, and that's always been the dream for a musician, is to play a tour of, we're going to do 180 gigs this year.
Yeah.
Imagine at the end of that
Yeah.
how amazing the set would be.
Just knowing it
be
back to
so
front.
perfect, right?
Yeah.
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 Well, and then I still feel like I'd kind of love to listen back Haven't heard them for such a long time. The very first recordings that we did.
Oh, yeah.
When we were jamming through those.
I'll have them saved somewhere.
Because I feel like most of what we did that first day probably is really close to how it ended up.
Well, there's a
reckon,
couple of
yeah.
examples. So I'll jump forward in junk.
This waiting set me free.
So on the second verse, I can't remember. I think I literally just had that guitar line, but it's the second half of the verse where you guys already took off. And I was like, we've got to do that. That was like the first run through, and like, remember that.
Yeah.
So I think you start to ascend, but then you do this thing together. You go up, and then this bit, like that. And that just, you both somehow magically did that out of thin air on the first run.
That's that's that whole thing. I think playing together so much and just knowing each other, and those are the magical moments, right? That's what we do it for.
But that's why we're recording the rehearsals too, so we didn't forget them.
That's my worst thing. Is just going, what did you do? I don't know. Record everything you do,
And then you try and get close to it, and nothing works anymore.
That's the worst. That's the worst part. Yeah, always got to record the rehearsal.
Another one I remember is the song "No Going Home" started off as a ballad. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I was actually, what you guys don't know is it started off as a really gentle finger picking, like instead of going bump bump like that, it was going dum ba da bum ba da bum ba bum ba.
Are you saying we boganized your song?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No,
what we do.
So before I got to you guys, I decided the finger picking thing didn't really work so much. So I went to what I ended up playing. But what was funny is that we played the mellow ballad version based on my original sort of vibe on it. And we played it through, and I remember we all went, that sounds great. Yep, awesome. Okay, what's next? Mm-hmm. And we were moving on, and I can't remember who it was, but someone said, actually, what if... And then it just opened a whole door to this whole thing. And then 10 minutes later, the song was radically different.
The thing I remember the most, weirdly, though, is in the first verse, there's that thing where Jasper's playing, and like the beat doesn't actually come in properly in the first bar.
Right.
And I always wanted to ask you whether that was like a mistake on the day that we really liked.
100%. It's always a mistake. It's always a mistake. It's called a happy
But I think
accident.
it's because we recorded it. I feel like maybe you missed the fact that we were starting the verse, but it's like one of my favorite parts of the song because it just eases in so nicely. So
another thing you
unexpectedly.
wouldn't program as well.
No, you'd never program.
Are you crazy?
Yeah, but that's why it's all those moments that make it. It's
Yeah.
the little. I'm sure there's probably a bunch of things that were not intentional or just flat out mistakes that we were like, actually, it sounds cool.
Yeah. I remember asking you about one, actually. What song was it? There was a song where... I think it's in Bonsai. Remember just recently? It's like, was that bass moment there?
Yeah.
Did you do that on purpose? Was that a mistake? And I think you said you did it on purpose, but I was never quite convinced.
I don't know if I ever do anything on purpose. I just see what comes out.
It's one of those moments where, I guess with experience, you know not to stop and keep it going and make the mistake work, like turn a mistake into a feature and all that kind of stuff. So you end up at the end going, I actually don't know if that was a mistake because it's really just reacting, because the audience never knows your intention, right?
Totally.
So if you go for one note and play the wrong string or something, but you then make it work, it becomes the part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that became a big conversation with you and I once we were sort of really tracking into the album. Was there were heaps of moments where we would be like, is this okay? It's like, oh, it's a bit of a funny note, or it's like, didn't quite nail the thing. And I think for both of us, getting away from our normal type of producer mindset.
Yeah.
And as soon as, when we were switching off, thinking too critically about stuff and just listening to whether it felt good or not.
Yes.
There's heaps of stuff I think that's in there that in another situation, like in a studio with a time limit, you'd just fix those things because you'd just have to do it all on the spot.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
we had a real luxury that we could sit with these, doing it on our own terms, in our own time, mostly from our own homes. It allowed us to kind of sit on those things and deliberate whether they actually need to be fixed or they're...
Which is also a reaction to us doing session work because you feel a need to deliver as perfect a part as possible, I guess, for the environment. And I think in some ways that becomes a trap because so many of our favorite albums are actually super loose.
Yeah.
Like recently I've been going back to the early Chili's again.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, I mean, you can listen to it critically and go, it's all moving in tempo, and it's, you know, it's all over the place.
The energy's undeniable.
Exactly, you know,
yeah.
so when we're tracking guitars, I think that's probably what you're referring to, one of those moments where I was like, well, I kind of I kind of bent that string funny, or got a weird harmonic or something. Should we do it again? And it's like, no, but it's vibey as.
It's cool.
It's like record vinyl crackle and things like that, or what is it when your strings squeak? You know,
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
That stuff is awesome. Because
I've been in
otherwise
studios where they've edited that out.
yeah, which is crazy to me because that's what a guitarist sounds like.
Exactly.
That's real, right? It's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
Bonjour. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. We pride ourselves in our agility, innovation, and can-do attitude. But sometimes there simply isn't enough time in the day to get everything done. That's where Overflow Support comes in. Overflow Support can help support you with those day-to-day tasks that fall by the wayside when times get busy. Anything from data entry, content management to desktop research, Overflow Support are here to help. Check them out at www.overflowsupport.co.nz.
Well, and that was one of our earliest conversations about doing this. If we're going to do original music, if we're going to record it, we want it to feel like we're in a room playing, because we know that when we play, we've done a lot of gigs together live, just playing covers or otherwise, and we always have a little something when we play that we're all like, oh man, like even if it's a covers gig that we go and do, it's still, we'll get to the end and be like, oh, that was pretty cool. I remember we were playing that song and you did that amazing.
Yeah.
There's always a
push it a bit,
little spark that was in there with everything that we did that we didn't want to lose by recording. So that we did have a real conversation about doing this project, whether we should go to a studio. I know that we're all fans of like cool, good production and everything. You know, we want stuff to sound really good. But we did talk about that, and we were just, we'll do it at home. We'll do it ourselves. We have all the means, half and half.
Yeah.
I guess, the drums were always going to be the hardest thing to do at home.
Yeah. But it's not a compromise on quality. You know,
No.
It was, I think part of our conversation also was understanding that we've got to go to the big studio is a modern mindset.
Yes.
But when you go back and go, well, where did they record Blood Sugar? In a house.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Bring
again,
the studio to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
So potentially you could go to a multi-$1,000 a day studio, and you know that the quality of all the recording is going to be fantastic, but the offset of that is you can only afford so much time.
Right.
So you don't get to spend as much time diving into those little creative elements or exploring ideas as much.
Yeah.
And sure, you can try and be prepared, but again, when we try to play live together as often as possible, have as much of it literally being the band in the room sound.
Yeah.
It was just a no-brainer for us to do it the way that we did it, to take time and be able to explore ideas and
Sort of. I mean, and not sort of. I agree with you, but we also did still do tight, punchy recordings at moments. You know,
Yes.
like so when we recorded U2, we went to a smaller studio, but with a great engineer, Scott Seabright, and we weren't sure at that point if we could do guitars on the same day because it didn't quite have the room. We've actually since been out there and done guitars, but so we tracked U2 together, and I wasn't actually sure if you were going to do that. I think there was a bit of humming and hawing on the lead up, and then on the day you were like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." I'm like, thank God.
Well, I think it was more about whether we wanted to capture the bass that day, or just have me play along with Jasper so that we have the live feel of that reacting to what was happening.
Yeah.
And my mindset going into that day was, we probably won't keep any of the bass stuff. I'm not not going to focus on it. So it was like, if we get it, we get it.
Right.
But I kind of wasn't thinking overly hard about. I was just kind of just jamming and playing off him and trying to have that vibe going on.
Yeah.
And then it was probably not until coming back to your studio and listening through stuff that I started to go, no, I think we should keep that one.
So the whole day, it was sort of always a guide track for you.
Less pressure that way. no focus on me at all.
Psychological trick to yourself.
The harder you think, the worse it gets, bro, right?
Yeah,
if
that's
you're just
right.
relaxed and it's like if you said, I'm not recording this podcast at all, this is just a test run, you'd think differently. You'd
Yes,
be like,
totally.
okay, cool.
That's right.
But
What does Dan call it? The red light fever, eh? When the red, and I know, when the light goes on, I really got to concentrate.
That's
now.
right. Yeah,
it definitely alters your you're playing. So that's really cool.
It's also because the way that I think you probably approach songs a little more pre-thought out than I do.
Yes. Yep.
In general, I think you like develop concepts. There's always room to throw something sneaky in, and I'm kind of the opposite. I kind of don't really like to think about what I'm going to do until we're recording.
You said that the other day, actually, and I walked away from that conversation thinking about it a lot.
Really?
Because I'm more like Jasper. I like to have a chart and learn the song. I can be on the spot, but I just like the comfort of already knowing how the song goes.
See, it's
but
not
you're like, I don't want to.
It's not that I dislike that
Yeah.
comfort, but I feel better stuff happens when I'm just a little bit more.
Well, I didn't come away thinking you were wrong. I just came away thinking that's an interesting process, that you actually trust your reaction more than you trust the opposite.
Well, it's like trusting the instinct, and like my whole approach is like I like to have that improv kind of element of like I would never each take that we would have recorded of any of these songs, the bass will be essentially the same general idea, but looking at them, there'd be very different stuff happening.
Yeah. If we had re-recorded, if we had, gone and done your bass again on a different day,
It would have been completely different.
I'm not even sure if it would have been anywhere near as cool.
Probably not.
Because
well, again, just the energy of playing together.
Playing off each other.
You can't beat that.
What's a good example here to play off that? Would be that like the End of World, or?
Yeah, possibly. It's actually probably one of the most structured lines that I went in thinking like, it's probably less jammy, to be honest.
But then there's moments where you both hold up.
Yeah.
Is it here? Coming up.
It's coming up the next bit. I know the one we're talking about.
Right, so you're hip hop stop.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It is actually not probably not the best example.
That last chorus would be. I mean, this song's probably a good example of like there's a set idea of that main riff, the do 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 do. That's kind of the only structured part.
Yes.
And then everything else coming off of that is basically just there's a lot of space in this song, maybe probably the most space of all the songs on the album. And it's just finding those little moments to either around mainly the vocal or the guitar, little moments to just say something with the bass. Yeah, I don't know. This one that's quite fun. There's chuck on that maybe from like the last chorus versey thing before the.
When you got nothing to lose, you got everything to gain. When the world don't fit right.
Yes.
When the world
It's like a main riff.
This is where it was really important that we brought the full snare in and straightened the beat out, eh?
Big time.
I remember we worked really hard on the delicate arrangement of the drum part on this song. We probably drove you crazy on this one, eh?
It's all right, Danny. I'm used to it. Getting told what to do.
There's a lot of bass answering the vocal.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah, you're really in the conversation, eh? Yeah.
That's cool because the busier you guys get, it makes me want to play even less.
Right.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get in the way of what you guys are doing. It's cool.
Ringo.
That was a great fill.
It's my attempt at reggae.
Here's a question. When you do things like that, do you have a process, or is it very reactionary when you like coming up with a drum fill or something like that?
Yeah, I think I have something that's going to work 100%. I'll be like, right, I know that's a rehearsed fill, but then I have to have options as well.
Right.
It's like Dan was talking about. It's really good to go, I'm going to do a really just normal take, what I think would be a normal drum part, and then always do the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Because as you say, there's always going to be like, oh, that's just stupid, Jasper. What are you doing? That's ridiculous. But then I love that one fill you did at the end. I'm taking it, and that's worth doing the whole song just for that.
Right, yeah.
In my opinion, anyway.
I want to jump back to No Going Home because we didn't quite finish that thread. So when we ended up arranging it, may have been you possibly that said, what if we attack this section differently. And then I think we ended up having like references to different bands and different genres and stuff for each section that sort of didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like the end of the chorus we called the Motown moment.
That's right.
The chorus itself I think was the Kings of Leon
Well,
moment.
because like you mentioned, I think it started as that ballady kind of halftime idea. I think the first thing was just like, let's just try and not halftime
push it around a bit.
and just what happens if it goes to instead of
Yeah.
and then that just inspired every section. I think that one of all of them, once we started doing that, I think it was within minutes we were playing the song pretty close
Almost
to the
as
form
is.
that it ended up.
Another interesting moment I remember was because we went, this bit will be like this and this bit will be like this and whatever. And I think it may have been you, Jasper, that said, now it feels like a bad edit when we're going from this section to that section. So it's such a radical shift. Now it feels like we've literally like gotten two takes and cut them together, even though we're playing it in the room. And so then we had a conversation about how we're going to get there. But I think you solved it with maybe just building up a little bit or something. I think it was more on your end where it wasn't a fill, but I think you built into a section which dynamically lifted it and connected those sections. I'm not sure what band you'd reference for this, like maybe Dave Matthews Band a little bit,
Yeah.
but quite a lot of stuff, I guess.
Can you go back? Just I love that beginning of the verse, just how the drums hold that first bar before properly coming in.
Oh yeah, you'd expect to come in full,
Just on the
but you put that snare on, you pull it back a little bit.
And I should say.
settles in on bar 2.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite moments.
It
on
does
the whole
feel
album.
very deliberate.
I think it would be, surely. I don't know.
And then from my point of view, this is like a police guitar part. But it's sort of reggae for you guys, eh? In a way.
Definitely reggae for me.
Yeah. And here comes the Kings of Leon moment.
Oh, yeah, that's a good reference. Yeah.
Gonna use somebody.
Oh, it's all of it's U2. It's just
Yes.
that big old rock chorus,
Big
isn't
rock
it?
chorus. And then probably doesn't sound like it now, but now Motown.
Yeah.
Yeah, we simplified that.
Yeah.
Because it was,
That's right.
like a much more. It was fuller.
I remember you going in the studio, and we're like, Jasper, less.
You want more, Phil? I got them.
But it was
Way.
a funny moment because, like for the record, you're always cool with that kind of collaboration.
No, I'm not.
But afterwards, when we heard the playback, I remember you turned to me and said, like, that was a great call. Sort of, you heard it in
absolutely.
context. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to do that. I mean, when you're tracking at the time, you're not really listening, whereas everyone else is going, oh yeah, no, that doesn't work or that does. So
Right.
yeah, that's a good process.
So, Danny, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
With these songs, I've actually never talked to you about this, but your lyric writing with this stuff, does that... I know that you have different processes normally, but with these songs, did the music sort of inspire your lyric writing, or did you have other ideas that you were looking to find music to put to? Like, where did it come from?
I had no lyrical ideas beforehand, and so the lyrics all came after the music. And I'm really fussy with lyrics.
No kidding.
Yeah, I don't like my lyrics being weak. And I think you need to find a good story. I think every song needs to have a story that informs it. In the past, when I was a teenager, I used to just start off with, I feel sad, the door is red, or whatever, and everything was just garbage. Like there was no structure to it. So I've, over the years, really worked hard on, before you write anything, what's the theme, what's the story, and then looking at each section of the song like it's moving the story forward. The same way that you plot out a documentary or a movie or whatever.
Totally.
There's sections. So the second verse has to move the story along. It can't just be an echo of the first verse, for example. So I'm always thinking about a character or a scenario or something like that to try and give it some sort of framework.
Is that ever inspired by the sort of tone of
The music.
Because we start from instrumental kind
Yeah.
of place with these songs. Does that trigger ideas, or are they
Yeah, because what I'm often doing is sort of humming along with the music, waiting for natural melodies and vowel shapes and stuff to take shape. So you sort of end up with a kind of a mumbly version first that often ends up become like that vowel shape will actually inform the word it becomes, and you're sort of writing around it like that. But yeah, the mood of the music 100% affects it.
What about so how much of the music versus just day-to-day life, like, does the song inspire all the lyrics, or is it what's happening at the time when you're writing the lyrics, or are you outside and you see something and go, I'm going to write about that? Like,
It's a mix, really. I mean, I do agree that it's probably better to not reveal all of the meanings behind songs because people take their own meanings, But between us, we know what I wrote Junk about, which is an incredibly personal, difficult thing myself and my partner went through. So she actually said to me a couple of years ago, I've been trying to find a song that's about the thing we're going through, and I can't find one. And so I secretly went off and
fix that.
Wrote Junk, yeah. And I didn't play her the song until the album was finished.
No way.
She hadn't heard any of the album. I kept it all to myself.
Oh, wow.
Cool. So I sat her down and I said, here's the song. Here are the lyrics. There you go. But yeah, so No Going Home, I guess it doesn't matter if I talk about some of the meanings. So No Going Home is an example of where you can really get away with metaphor and poetry and so on. By disconnecting yourself, you can almost be more personal. So if I wrote a song that said, I feel this and I, whatever, it's almost like it kind of lands in a lumpy way and it immediately alienates the listener in a way. But No Going Home, the story of it is basically, what if an apocalyptic situation played out, the world literally was ending, and right at that moment you fell in love with somebody. So what is the conversation there? Do we get together? Like, do you want to be my girlfriend? Is there any is there any point making any plans when literally everything's on fire?
Do you have a bunker at home? Can I stay there?
And so that was the sort of the launch pad. But a lot of it is about the fact, sort of behind the scenes, it's about the fact that no matter what, we can't go back. And we've just, as a globe, been through this pandemic, and there's all sorts of other things going on. We can't go back pre-pandemic, know, and we can't go back pre-AI and so on. So there's no going back. There's no going home.
On so many levels.
On so many levels. So it's a wrestle with that, which is why a lot of the lyrics are. I'm not going to start quoting lyrics, but it's kind of like to the effect of like, screw it, let's get drunk. It's like, let's lean into this, and even if only got 10 minutes before the bombs drop, let's make those 10 minutes count together.
Yeah, I think everyone's thought of that scenario. The world's a scary place now, and it's like, what would you do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Another song that's quite notable. Which you at one point said this was your favourite song on the record. Is that still the case?
I go through different songs, and listening to them, I have favourites versus playing them, I have favourites.
Right.
This one's definitely fun to play. I have to think a lot, though, but...
I love that, how it's in 7, but feels so natural.
Yeah.
It's not a jarring 7 at all.
Right.
Those open hats crossing over. Well, I guess they're in 4, technically.
Yeah. That's the idea with odd, though, right? The good way to write odd is to make it feel right, not feel odd.
Yeah, I love the bass playing in the song. I like all of the bass playing, but I really like this one at the end. Just all of it, so good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is definitely the drum song, isn't it, on the album?
Yeah, actually having to relearn it. Jeez, there's a lot of fills in this.
What about the fill? I'll jump forward. When you did it at the moment, I remember just like so excited watching you play this part. After. Oh, here we go.
Take it easy, man. Far out.
It reminded me of Stuart Copeland's playing in Regatta de Blanc, where he's just on the edge. And, one of the things that Dan and I were quite careful about, we didn't want to quantize the crap out of the drums.
Yeah, so, you can definitely hear that it's real, eh?
It's real,
like
for
it's
sure.
all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's kind of fun. That's the thing.
That was one of those ones that was early on. I think you were just like, you have to check this fill out. You're like, it's because I think it reminded you a little bit of Stuart Copeland, and in that where it's like he's like, it's right on the brink of falling over and not quite making it.
Yeah.
And then it makes it. And you're just like, it feels so good.
So I've got my own answer, but why do you think that lands so well?
Well, because you know me, I'm a huge fan of tension and release. That's
Yes.
just a moment of complete tension and a little bit uncomfortable, and then it releases so beautifully.
Right, yeah.
But it's just
Dan is also a drummer, really. Deep down, he can play the drums on bass. So I think he can do all of that on bass.
Yeah.
you know.
I just think that's like it's beautiful. If that was like, it's essentially perfect because Jasper's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's just so like on the edge. It just feels frantic and awesome, and it's exciting. It's just fun to listen to
Yeah, it does. Tension and release is a really good way of
because
putting
it's
it.
like nothing about it is wrong.
No.
It's just like it just builds this energy that's
Yeah.
And again, potentially, if we wanted to look at, I think for all of us, performances like on the grid of Pro Tools and trying to fix stuff, those moments would disappear.
That's right.
That would be like, oh, that's a cool fancy
Well,
fill.
let's be fully transparent here. We did actually attempt it one day.
We tried it out just to see, yeah.
edit it, and we just butchered it.
That was awful.
I think we deleted the whole session. How do you feel listening to it? Because I know that sometimes on both guitars and vocals for me, sometimes I'll hear something that in my mind is not perfect and it irritates me, but everybody else is like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think as a drummer, quite often in the studio, especially, I always want to compare it to the click, for example, and then I'm always striving to be on. And I know that if you put the click under there, you'd be like, ugh. But I'm glad it's in there because at the end of the day, without the click in it as a whole, I think it's fun. It's fun. It's different. And being that it's our music, we can do what we want.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've been on recordings before where they've ended up. I remember being on one recording where I recorded a long repetitive guitar sequence, and the producer then told the engineer to get one bar and then loop it.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to the producer, like, did I screw it up? I thought it was okay. And he went, no, it was fine. I just want it to sound unnatural.
Yeah. I don't want the human element.
Yeah. And it was a pop song, but I remember just going, it's so disappointing, you know? So I'm sure it's the same for you guys, right? How many recordings have you done? In fact, we won't talk about it, but there's one in LA with a very amazing person, which was all amazing for so many reasons, except the music sucked, right? Yeah. and it's like, how many recordings have you done where you wish that you could be more proud of the outcome?
Oh, totally.
But it doesn't really feel like you truly either got to play properly or the edit sort of took the playing out of it.
Well, that's most. It depends on the situation, obviously, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's again, that comes back to such a big part of the discussion that we had about this project was thanks, Get Back, Peter Jackson and the Beatles for like inspiring that idea of like the deep down. That's how we've always talked about playing music. What we enjoy about music is that connection, that live playing, that interaction is everything. And then you just, the nature of the industry, we sort of start to slip into making things a bit more perfect and we'll fix it and we'll do all that sort of stuff. So the conscious effort to not do that here is what I mean. I'm very proud of it for that reason, because it's a really organic just it is us in a room essentially.
Because also, even though I didn't record guitars on the same day as you guys, we decided to record the guitars in the same, almost as if I was there. So
to like pre sort of like didn't do much to those, just like here's the what we had at the end of the day.
That's right.
And you just played on to that exact energy that we had. And
I decided that I didn't want to do sections separately with different tones and stuff, which is all pretty standard these days. I wanted to do straight shots of the whole song.
Yep.
And if I was going to get a different tone, I had to be able to achieve it in the performance.
Yeah.
So I had to reach over and flick that thing or push the pedal or whatever.
well, and that was part of thinking ahead for playing them live.
Also,
we didn't want to make a record that would then have to figure out how the hell are we going to play this live.
It's
But
so
I actually wanted to hear myself awkwardly click that thing or whatever, because that's some of my favorite moments on some of the older records.
Well, it's just like the drum fill we were just talking about.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. It's like, well, it doesn't have to be 1000% perfect.
Yeah.
It's the little edgy bits that make it feel alive and feel human.
So with the exception of a few overdubs, I think we did the guitars on the whole thing in like 4 hours or something, right?
Oh, we smashed through it, yeah.
Also, on the rhythm section day, we booked the whole day, right? In the studio? Yeah. But we finished the whole thing in 2 hours
Yeah.
or something.
Traffic.
Yeah, we're worried
We always like, quick,
Beat the
Get
traffic.
it done, guys.
No. But where I'm going with this, though, was that then you pulled the most genius move that I still can't believe almost never happened, which is you reminded us that we had forgotten about Just a Little Bit, the very first song that
Which
kicked the whole
still
thing off.
just had electric drums on it.
Yeah, and it was a demo.
We're in this great sounding room with a
Yep.
great sounding kit.
And it never even occurred to us to put that on the record, which is moronic now if you think about it. And you're like, well, why don't we just re-record drums for Just a Little Bit and do that one too?
Yeah, because I mean, I'd rehearsed the crap out of it, so I was like, I'm pretty sure I can get this
Yeah.
pretty quick. And
Well,
yeah,
I'm assuming
so
that
glad
you must have practiced it just for fun or something, right? Because you knew it so well.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs, and I quite often at home I'll just play it just for the fun of it.
Then I feel like I only did 2 takes, right?
Well, that's the thing.
Because I
Like-
yeah.
Firstly, we
definitely.
didn't know if we had anything to actually play against because we hadn't prepared a guide track.
Well, no, Dan's so onto it. He's always got his Dropbox, and it's like, hey Dan, and he's like, yep, bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang. It's
I think
on
it was
the
in our
session.
Dropbox, eh?
It was just
It
boom.
must have been.
Yeah.
We must have made a drumless version.
I think we just got really lucky because we had a drumless version for
But
some reason.
we had to go and find it.
Yeah.
Quickly go and see if we
It
had
took you
send
guys
as
all
well.
of 2 minutes, and it was on Pro Tools, and I was ready to play it.
But then we go, all right, let's go for it, and you do one take, and we're just like, that's the take. That was amazing. First take, oh my god, and you're like, nope, not good enough.
I forgot something.
I'm sure it was almost perfect. But yeah, second take, whole one shot, that was it. Should we listen to some of it?
It'd be interesting to A/B the demo to, well, you know, like the electronic
I
drums.
did actually recently.
And how different is it?
It's quite different.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you listen to the demo now and you're like, oh, interesting. So, but again, it was a lockdown, jokey.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Yeah.
But boy, the new version steps up. Another one that was almost no editing on the drums, by the way. I think.
Awesome.
Them. When I say no editing, I think that would mean that perhaps there's one kick drum that's a tiny bit, you know.
Oh, there's
you
got
just
to
do-
be, yeah.
Yeah, but like literally 2 of those maybe or something like that.
Don't make you wanna
Also, can we just take a minute to say how great Scott Seabright
Yes.
was
100%, yeah.
to work with, and his mixing and everything. Like,
Yeah.
he really got what we were going for and kind of
Yeah.
honored what we aimed for really beautifully.
Scott's awesome, and I'd say you should record with him, but I think he's booked out for the next
Yeah.
5
No,
years.
don't record with him because he needs to be available for our things.
Yeah. He's a busy man.
Why not subscribe? It'll make your life better. That's a good point, actually, because it's so hard being inside your own project. And, you know, you get the mix back and you're critically listening and, you know, this is your one chance to make changes. And we obviously had a list of a few things to do, but then it's done and then you're sort of not sure what to do with it. It's funny, every time I'm working on someone else's stuff, it's easier.
Yeah.
Well, it's not funny, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Because you listen to things in a hypersensitive way and you question things like, is that kick drum really the right sound, or is that guitar tone right, or whatever? And I think the gift of time is you start to forget.
Yeah.
But the other reason why I've been going back and listening to some of my favorite records from the past, like I spent a day listening to Primus, Sailing the Seas of Cheese,
Great.
and Mother's Milk, hadn't listened to that for a long time, stuff like that. Is that I do that because you go back with your sort of critical, more trained ears, and you go, wow, that snare drum is terrible.
And awesome.
Yes.
And awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds to the vibe.
Yeah.
And if you corrected everything, you'd probably ruin those records as well.
Yeah.
Another thing we should talk about is our keyboard players, the other keyboard players, Stephen Small and Eddie Rayner.
Indeed.
Stephen's an old friend of the band and has played with us a bunch and played with you guys all over the world together.
Yeah.
And he played on When the World Don't Fit. So if we jump to the... We listened to this a bit before. But one of the great features, I think, is this bit.
Again, in the home studio.
Yeah.
Too easy, right?
Well, keyboards are so easy to record at home, eh? Just plug them in.
Well, yeah, the whole concept of the keyboards for this, it's actually quite an interesting discussion, I think. But Steve Small, what can you say? He's fantastic. That's the same concept as when the idea started with the very first song that we did remotely. It was Mark Steven first. When we wanted to do this project, we were talking about not doing keyboards. We were talking about just doing a straight trio
Yep.
record
Bare bones.
with like minimal, if any, overdubs. Just do a old-fashioned trio record.
Almost like a punk record.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the more that we progressed along, we were like, oh, I think keyboards would be nice. It's going to add that extra little sparkle.
I think the difference was when we brought just a little bit back in.
Yes.
Because then now we had this like incredible arrangement.
Yeah, and that all felt so good. We wanted to hear that. But then it started that idea of, okay, if we're going to get keyboards, do we do it ourselves? Do we get someone to just do all the songs? Or what ended up happening was, do we just try and find different people
Yes.
per song? And remember that conversation initially was, let's take someone and give them one of the songs that's completely not what they would normally do.
That's right. Yeah.
So when the conversation with asking Eddie to be involved started, we were like, well, there's probably an obvious song or two for him to do, but let's give him the ones that would be less obvious just to see what he'll do and what would happen to
Or
them.
with World, I think the idea was like, oh, we know this guy who plays for that reggae band.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a reggae song. And one of us said, no, let's not get the reggae guy to play on the reggae songs.
Let's get the jazz guy to do the reggae song. But so like with Eddie, I mean, Eddie's just a genius. So whatever he does, it's gonna put Eddie flavor
Yeah.
on it. But like,
And we sent him 2 options to choose from.
yes, and then he just did them both anyway. He said, Eddie, just choose one. It's okay. Don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
Don't want to take the piss. Just choose which one you like best, and maybe a day later.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh no, he wasn't. He was really sick.
Oh, was
when we
it?
tried to record it, remember that? He was like, I'll get around to them as soon as I can.
That's right. So it took another week or so. But
And then they just both appeared and kind of blew our minds and completely changed the tone in such a good way.
yeah. Well, in
for
Junk,
those songs.
he in my impression, he found a sort of Eastern vibe a little bit. I'll play that bit.
That second verse is just, I love that second verse. The strings and his arpeggiators, it's so cool.
Now she's waiting in a muted room.
So it's got the arpeggiator thing there.
She's got
But it's a string thing that comes in.
Yeah.
It's not completely Eastern sounding, but it just gives me that feeling.
her future at dawn's a hang and they're just out of reach.
You
The
know?
nice, swell, like slidey string.
In motion,
Just makes it sound really worldly, I think.
some sleep.
I mean, we're very honoured to
Yes.
have Eddie
Very lucky.
play on these songs. But then we're honoured to have Mark and Stephen Small as well. But
Absolutely.
They're all heavyweights. So they're all amazing musicians. I think the profound thing about Eddie is that we all grew up listening to Split Ends, and when you're a kid and you're a fan of a band, and then cut forward to the future, and one of the very prominent sounds from that band, the person, because Eddie was such a large part of the Split Ends sound, you then hear it on your own song. I don't know about you guys, but it kind of spins my head around.
oh, totally.
That's crazy,
Yeah.
eh?
In fact, Bonsai is an interesting song also because that's the one that you brought in, and you started off with it started life as kind of a pop sort of thing.
Oh, it was very, sort of a groovy, poppy, very synth driven.
Yeah.
And then, you turned that around to be guitar driven, which obviously we needed to do for our configuration.
Well, my guitar line at the front used to be the synth line,
It was one of one of the main hooks.
and I more or less didn't change it.
But this is also one of the ones where Eddie came up with something that only Eddie could do, and
Yes.
that in a million years we wouldn't or couldn't have thought of doing.
yeah,
and it totally, again, changed the tone and feel of the song.
Right.
In such an interesting way.
But the interesting experience from my point of view also is that because it did start off as sort of a pop, almost funk sort of thing, I had it in my head for ages that it was like a funk song. And so I was trying to come up with like funk guitar parts, and none of them landed properly. I couldn't get them to really sit right. And I had this eureka moment one day where I went, oh, this isn't a funk song, this is a ballad. This is actually quite a sad song. And also because by then I'd written the lyrics and they're a little bit charged and so on. But I realized, like, maybe you guys think about it differently, but from my point of view, I always go into the song as if it's like a sad ballad. And that's when I came up with the guitar part I wrote, which is much more haunting. You guys have a kind of funkier approach, would you say, on the rhythm section? More of a bouncy?
Oh, definitely. It's quite bouncy. It's
Yeah.
born from a groovy kind of place.
So
But that's why there's those cool contrasts.
Yes.
Throughout.
So I think of it as a ballad, but you don't.
I mean, now I do. It's because
Yeah.
it's got a mournful kind of thing. But I like those juxtapositions of like, rhythm section. Jasper and I, it's kind of fun and groovy to play, but it doesn't. Yeah. That marries really nicely with the more slow, drawn out melodies and other things that are happening. It's a fun one to play.
I think this is also the one that had the least amount of notes on the mix,
Yeah.
because I think it just landed.
That one was just on. And again, Eastern vibe
Yeah.
somehow.
And doesn't Eddie's part there just make the whole thing?
Well, and also what that's done is taken where we are doing kind of a swingy, groovy thing. That perfectly straight
Yeah.
thing, it just makes the feel. It locks it perfectly in the middle.
That's
what
right.
what it needed.
Yeah.
Like that just made the vocal more cohesive. Made every other part. It marries the top line and the sort of swung, groovy bottom, and just softens it all.
Because you are putting that snare at a very late place, like ba-dum. Like that kind of highlights the swing in a way.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like you're saying, it's sort of not a swing at the
Well,
same.
yeah, we're playing a swung 16th thing, and
Yeah.
Eddie's got a very straight 16th. And again, your head kind of goes, well, that shouldn't work, but
Yeah.
it works beautifully.
Yeah. I also worked a lot on the vocal line for this because my original line went super high and I couldn't hit it properly. I learned that lesson years ago on another session where I wrote something that was actually slightly out of my vocal range, and I didn't realize until the band had already tracked and I was doing the vocals in the studio. I'm like, God damn it, you know.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So with this one, I was like, I don't want to be cursed with a song that I can't sing live, you know.
Yeah.
So I dropped the vocal melody down, but I think it ended up suiting the verses more anyway.
Well, you did a lot of structuring on the vocals for a lot of these. I know they went through many iterations
Yeah.
of where the melody would sit. Quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's the luxury of having time.
Yeah.
Again, in our own studios, because some of my favorite records on a vocal point of view feel like the person was ad-libbing the vocals almost. They don't feel like very concise, but, you know.
Yeah.
That's kind of easy to write in a way, but to make it feel like it's coming out in the moment, like the
Yeah.
artist is literally thinking of this and saying it in the moment. That's really hard to achieve.
Because would it be fair to say, I mean, Bonsai was the biggest probably challenge
Yep.
overall to get together, like you said, taking it from where it was, finding the tone, finding how to make it work. I know that you kind of agonized over this one the most.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing that, like you said, being able to spend that time and do the process that way.
Well, because it started off with that funk pop thing, so the original lyrics were really light and really fun. And then as it started to change its mood, and I had messed around with the different phrasings and where the melody was, and then rewrote the guitar lines a few times, and then the lyrics had to change. There were quite a few different versions of the lyrics.
Yeah.
I still got to the end of it going, why is it called Bonsai? I'm still not entirely sure. It sort of makes sense as long as you don't think about it too much.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Rolls
yeah.
off the tongue nice.
And I like the word bonsai, you know. Oh, well, I mean, we did it. We made an album
Yeah.
with some great people, and I think all of our gambles in terms of writing and production and recording approaches all paid off big time.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I'm stoked with it.
I'm super happy with it. Sounds
Yeah.
awesome. I'm definitely, sharing it with everyone that I can.
Yeah.
And now we get to go and play it live.
Yay!
Which is great because now we can sort of forget the album and discover the songs in a live capacity.
Yeah, which we're also already slightly adapting the album already
Yes.
for the live versions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is
fun.
it's super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you said, Danny, how you were like, "Oh, I've got a mix. Do you want to hear it?" I was like, "No." Oh,
That's right.
I've got it.
We
And I
forgot to
kept
talk about that.
Danny kept saying, "Oh yeah." I was like, no, I'm going to be real patient, and I love that I could.
Listen to it when it's finished.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I actually.
I can't believe you did that. Like Jasper didn't hear anything until the whole thing was finished.
Because I just wanted to go from, A to Z and not go through all that process. I mean, you guys have to do all the stuff. Like, I just play drums, but...
I kind of envy it, though.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
was... I got a present. I was
Yeah.
like, Danny goes, oh, what's in your Dropbox? I was like, yay. So I went home, put the hi-fi on, and it was just so cool to listen through the whole thing and go, wow, this
How
is
did that
awesome.
feel?
It was great. Like,
Yeah.
I could definitely hear all the work that you guys put into it. And it's
But we
amazing.
obviously had done a lot, so
Yeah,
was
you heard
it
it.
miles away from what you thought, or?
Yeah, it was different. It was completely different because
Yeah.
I waited for it to be mastered as well. Remember,
Right, yes.
It wasn't just mixed; it was the finished product, and it's like, wow, this sounds amazing.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really cool.
Which also it's quite surprising. Normally, putting that amount of time into a project, by the time you get it mixed and mastered, you're kind of usually a bit sick of it.
Totally.
And not at all.
No.
I remember, particularly when the masters came back, we were both like, "Well, this it worked. I
Yeah.
like it. It sounds
Yeah.
great."
No, you're right. I often can't listen to anything for like 2 years.
Yeah.
After because you've heard it a bazillion
It's
times.
like Primus all over again. 20 years, 30
yeah,
years.
yeah. But I've been listening to it. I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
That's cool.
All right. Well, on to the next one. We're going to start a rehearsal now and work out the live show.
How does it go again?
Yeah, we'll find out.